Welcome to the 42 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney, out of the Fighting City of Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. Newtown Edgemont Little League, the Green Machine, 1982 District 19 champs. Little information dump. I am joined by two of the greatest Americans, Kendall Rogers of the Republic of East Texas, Aaron Fitt, just locking down the Atlantic coastline for us. Boys, happy Tuesday evening. I think it's Tuesday. We're in preview mode, so every day is the same.
Who knows?
No sleep zone. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Powering
awesome.
through, Runes. This is not for the weary this time of year. You better be willing to roll up your socks and get after it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that expression, roll up your socks. I was more thinking like pitch counts be damned, but you're right, Fitzy. Every day, get your socks rolled up and let's compete. That's what people need to do during preview season.
I don't really know if roll up your socks is an expression, but it is now.
It is. Whatever it is, it's got me fired up. Boys, oh good. Let me thank Driveline, or not Driveline. We've always thanked Driveline, but for today, we are going to thank Netting Professionals because they are the presenting sponsor of the Roll Up Your Socks preview podcast. So Netting Pros, they are the presenting sponsor tonight. They specialize in the design, fabrication, and installation of custom netting for college baseball programs all around the country. Next time your field or facility needs something new, make sure to check out Netting Professionals. Will Miner and these guys are absolutely awesome, all caps, huge sponsors of the. Really, it was because of them that we got to do the fourth coach conversations, which was a great series that we enjoyed very much, and we were grateful for the guys at Netting Pros. They love the sport, so we want to encourage everyone to support them. So the socks are rolled up. They need to be rolled up because we're coming in hot right now. Boys, let's do this. We just had a really fun exercise. We don't have David Seifert with us tonight. We did the All-American list. It's so fun. It's so hard.
You got to let me jump in here. You got to let me jump in here, Rose, because we're laughing because if you don't get your internet upgraded before next time we do this, we're going to have problems. We're getting a lot of.
I think my favorite thing so far tonight, in like the 2 minutes we've been going, is the frozen runes going.
Frozen. Listen, podcast listeners won't even notice because your voice is fine, no cutouts there, but we're getting some good frozen runes action tonight. I'm digging it.
So my voice is powering through, but my face can't hack it. That's
your face. It's just too pretty that the system is overloaded.
The face for radio. Oh my gosh. Well, hey, if the only thing they can do is hear me, that now we're playing to our strengths, so that's good. All good. So I feel bad that Seif isn't here, but we'll speak for him. Let's talk about the All-American list creation, boys. That to me is a really fun exercise, and it's a really encouraging exercise. So you start to figure out, like, dang, there's some good players in college baseball. So, Fitzy, let me start with you. Give me a takeaway from the All-American exercise.
Position player group really, really strong this year. Pitcher group, much less so. I believe, which isn't to say there aren't guys that we like, but it's really hard to find the slam dunk. Like, whoa, this guy's a first team All-American, right? Like as far as pitchers. I mean, for me, like we were working our power rankings down. I was thinking to myself, who would be the number one starting pitcher? Like who's got the combination of elite stuff and elite track record? And okay, well, you've got Landon Sims. He's a first team All-American. He was one of the best closers in the country last year, the second best closer in the country last year. But he's never started, so like, is he number one? Maybe he could be the best guy, but track record is a little light. I think Carson Wisenhunt, besides Sims, probably has the best stuff out of the first teamers, but I mean, he had a 3.70 ERA last year and he hasn't really held up for a full workload. He's only threw 62 innings last year. So there's a question there. Messick had a great year for Florida State, ACC pitcher of the year. But it's, ERA over 3, usually you look for something a little lower than that. We're talking about the best guys, the slam dunk guys. And it's not like it's blow you away stuff either. It's good stuff. But so, I guess Justin Campbell, he's got really good pitchability, solid numbers, but it's not like dominant first round stuff. So that's the thing that stands out to me. There's no like rocker lighter Hoagland, slam dunk first team guys heading into this exercise, but there's so many in the position player side at almost every position. It was loaded.
Yeah. KR, what do you got? What are some of your takeaways from the creation of the list?
Well, one of my biggest takeaways is the fact that the catcher position is really good in college baseball this year. I mean, that was a pretty interesting debate between all of us. I think when you look at Daniel Susac at Arizona, obvious him or Logan Tanner, I'd say the obvious one or number one or number two guys in the country. But outside of that, I mean, you look at Hayden Dunhurst at Ole Miss. Kevin Parada. We were probably I didn't even look at anybody else's All-American teams, but my guess is we're probably the odd people out on Kevin Parada. But I mean, if you look at those three guys, I mean, Daniel Susak's a total package. Logan Tanner, the total package. Hayden Dunhurst may not have the overall offensive numbers as the first two guys, but I mean, you're talking about a premier defender. So when you look at those three guys, like, where does Kevin Parada fit in? Like, I don't think you would take Kevin Parada over any of those three guys. So I thought the catcher position. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I thought the catcher position was really, really interesting. I think when you look at the shortstop position, I think is loaded as well. I mean, you look at, Ryan Ritter, Jacob Gonzalez, and Brooks Lee. I mean, what a trio that is. So I'm with Aaron. I think the pitching, to me, there's a lot of uncertainty. Carson Palmquist from Miami moving in the starting rotation as well. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there, but boy, that shortstop position and the catcher position looks really good in college baseball this year.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. Like, the position players, you're just like, gosh, dang, like it's future big leaguers everywhere. I mean, I'm looking at that first team and I'm thinking, man, just give me a weekend to coach that team against anybody. Like, just come on. Like, you could fill out that batting lineup in any order you want. I mean, it's just, damage doer after damage doer after damage doer. And then, but you're right, guys, like the pitching is really, all over the map. And then I think the other interesting thing about this All-American list or team that I don't recall from the past is, man, there were so many players in this echelon that are changing positions. You mentioned Palmquist and Sims going from reliever, like crazy shut the door relievers, to starters. What do you do with that? You start thinking about, Peyton Graham was a guy that we talked a lot about, where he's going from third to short. Hey, Ethan Long, the kid, Ethan Long almost won Pac-12 Player of the Year as a true freshman. And you're trying to fit him in like, hey, he's going to be a third baseman, but what's that going to look like? Dominick Keegan was really confusing. I mean, just some of the guys that were off the list were amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob Berry. I mean, LSU's talking about putting Jacob Berry at third base this spring. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting potential position changes out there.
Yep.
Yeah, and
so
I thought,
I see Hunter asking about Sam Highfield. We talked a lot about Sam. He's a big part of why NC State's ranked as high as they are, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And he's on our second team, and the numbers were very good, but it's, last year, I mean, it's 3.6 ERA, and the strikeout rate's lower. I mean, if you compare him with like Carson Wisenhunt, who we're kind of projecting forward, we think Wisenhunt could be a top 10 pick. Highfield's good, but his stuff isn't quite that good. Doesn't miss bats at the same rate. And so that's why he's second team and not first team. But boy, we're obviously really high on him. We've got him ranked as one of the, 6 to 8 best starting pitchers in the country. He's a stud. He's a big game performer, and he's wily. Slot shifter. I love that. He's a lot of fun.
Yes. How about, guys? One of the things that jumped out at me is some of the second basemen that didn't make it. If I'm looking at this right, Luke Gold, Cade Doty, Sean McClain. I mean, give me those three dudes. Holy heck, those are good players.
Yeah, and how about third base was a loaded spot. We mentioned Brock Wilkin is a third teamer for Wake Forest. He could have been, in my opinion, a first teamer. But you've got Tyler Locklear, who was our first teamer last year at VCU. You've got Braden Taylor at TCU, who's really tooled up. You've got Ethan Long, and you've got Jacob Berry. The guys, can they handle that spot defensively? They're both on our team as DHs. And then you've got like a Nolan Shanwell at Florida Atlantic, Yo-Yo Morales, Caden Wallace. Like, I hated leading Caden Wallace off the team. And if he were still in the outfield, it would have been a shoe-in. We would have found a spot for him. Third base is just a loaded spot. And, his strikeout rate was a little higher last year. There's a little that he still has to prove. He had a very good freshman year, but he's going to be a superstar. I hate that he's not on our team. I hate that.
Yeah, speaking of Hades on our team. Well, no, I was going to say, speaking of Hades on our team is Tim Elko. We actually had a probably about a 5-6 minute debate on Ethan Long versus Tim Elko. Their numbers are actually very similar, but when you look at the fact that Elko did it on one leg last year, essentially, that was a tough guy for me to leave off. I mean, you just look at his power numbers, his consistency, his leadership, which I think, all those three things matters on these kind of teams. He was tough to leave off too. But I mean, you look at Ethan Long and the numbers that he put up as a true freshman in that conference. I mean, you can't go wrong there either.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, that's you start thinking about this list. There's 300 third basemen, and we're picking 3 of them. It's like that's a thin funnel.
And really, there's a bunch more that are having to play DH, right? Like there's even more than 300 first basemen who are. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to crack those 3 All-American teams. And Caden Grice, I mean, I think a lot of people listed him as a two-way guy. The intel I'm getting is that he's probably just going to be a hitter this year, so we kind of had to put him at first base. But that two-way spot is interesting now. I mean, I think. We put Nolan McLean as our third teamer at the two-way spot. I'm excited about that one. Yeah, that's a guy
he's a big part of why we love Oklahoma State. That
no
kid,
doubt.
He didn't have a fall last year. I get to see them a bunch in person last year, and boy, he sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, it takes you 0.6 seconds to spot who's on full football scholarship out here, right? Like McLean just jumps off the screen at you. It's amazing.
I think he's going to have a year. I mean, I think he's going to be a lot like Caden Wallace, offensively and defensively. I think he's a bigger guy, but he can play that third. Both those guys can play third base. They move well. They got all the tools. But McLean's also like 97 off the bump with a freaking 90-mile-an-hour cutter that'll just eat you up. So if they use him in the bullpen, as Rob Walton was saying that they plan to in the fall, that's very exciting. And the same goes for Zach Nato, our second teamer. He could have been an All-American at shortstop on one of these teams. We could have had him, second or third team. Probably not going to beat out Jacob Gonzalez on this list, but he probably would have been our third teamer, except, he also pitches some. He's a part of their bullpen. He might be closing games. So there he is. He's second team as a two-way guy.
Hey, two guys.
Go ahead.
No. I was going to say real quick. Yeah, I was going to say 2 guys real quick. Jace Grady at Dallas Baptist. He was a guy that I saw in the fall. He looked terrific. I mean, just a physical looking hitter. I think he's going to hit for a lot more power than he did last year. Just a terrific overall player. And I think the other guy for me that was kind of illuminating, and and I knew he hit for an eye average. He had an impressive skill set. But when you look at Nathan Church at UC Irvine, I mean, honestly, I didn't realize he had 100 hits last year. I mean, his numbers last year were phenomenal. Obviously, he's a big reason why the Anteaters are a preseason ranked team this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Hey, I think I said this out loud when we were kind of having our discussion that you could argue he's the best pure hitter in the country. He's just not 6'4". And here's a category I wanted to ask, and then I see Vandy Chris's question on Dom Keegan. We'll get to that in a second because we did have a really good. I thought we had a really healthy conversation around Dom Keegan for this. So here's the. I'll give you my answer, but a player that through this discussion. You were, let's say you were a 5 on and then you were a 9 on or whatever the metric is. Like you kind of liked him and then you left the conversation like, dang, I didn't realize. So my guy is Chase DeLauder. I kind of went in lukewarm, what's the expression? All coast almost, like summer league all-star. Heard that a million times. He looks the part. He's 6'5". He's left-handed. But here's what I didn't realize, guys. JMU barely played last year. He played like 28 games. So I had glanced at his numbers in the past, and I'm like, oh, man, that's what's got everybody so hot and bothered. And then you dig into it. You're like, man, okay, take those numbers and multiply by 2, and it's 24 doubles and it's 12 home runs, and it's more walks than strikeouts, and he can close. Like he's another guy that could have been a two-way guy. So Chase DeLauder, for me, that's another reason I love this exercise because it forces you to kind of research guys, and you're like, man, I didn't realize he had that good of a year. Fitzy, who would you go with in that category?
There are 2 outfielders that jump out to me. One is Jared McKenzie, who I know Kendall's really high on. And more I kind of drilled down on him and looked at the numbers and, the tools that Kendall keeps talking about. He sounds, I've never seen him play. I haven't seen Baylor in a couple of years in person. He sounds awesome. And I'm glad we have him on the second team. And the other one is Dylan Beavers at Cal, Team USA guy. He had 18 home runs last spring. I think maybe I didn't realize just how prolific a power hitter this guy is. Glad to get him on the third team.
Yeah. KR, go ahead.
Yeah, I already mentioned Church, but, Gavin Cross for me a little bit, I think, kind of opened my eyes. I mean, he's a guy that certainly he's a big-time prospect, but, I mean, with Virginia Tech getting off to a hot start last year, they kind of fizzling down the stretch. You didn't really hear his name a lot down the stretch last year. And I just think as you dive into his numbers, his production kind of meets that prospect hype that's kind of tied around him a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, let's tackle the question from Vandy Chris in the chat there. Thoughts on Dom Keegan moving behind the plate, and let's kind of expand the question to the discussion we talked about. Dominick Keegan for a list like an All-American list. You want to go first, Fitzy?
Yeah, I mean it's he was very much in the discussion. more at first base for us than at catcher, just because we had 4 or 5 catchers. We really liked it. I just don't think he could have jumped because of the lack of defensive track record back there. But he played first base last year. I still think he's probably going to play his share of first base this year because they've got Jack Bulger and Alan Espinal, who I think are both very talented defensively. But I know Keegan has improved. He has worked hard on it. I remember talking this summer with Scott Pickler, at YD, and he broke it down and said, look, this guy, he's got a chance back there. He's cleaned up the receiving and the blocking some, and there's still some questions, I guess, from some scouts about whether his hands will work long-term at that position, but he has gotten better. And Pickler told me, like, every time he went out there, he got a little bit better. And a big, I think, area of emphasis is just improving his transfer, to help that arm play up a little bit. Cause kind of a, slightly above average, maybe 55 arm, but I think it could play up if he could just get that transfer a little quicker. So they're very interesting. I mean, certainly it gives Vanderbilt more flexibility. If he can stick back there, you could always get Bulger in the lineup in left field or DH, or, keep that DH spot open. You can move Tate Colwick around. They've got a lot of moving parts and flexibility, as you would expect probably from a Tim Corbin club. And I think Keegan's potential, 2 or 3 position mobility plays into that.
What's your take, KR?
Well, I think for me, I'm just really interested to see how he does back there. This is a guy that, CJ Rodriguez was a phenomenal defensive catcher, so you really didn't get to see Dom a lot last year behind the plate. But, you talk to people around the program, and they seem to think that, he's got a lot of potential back there. So for me, I haven't actually seen him behind the plate. So I'm so intrigued to see if what people say about him kind of, during the offseason kind of meets what we see in season. So clearly he's got a big time bat. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had I think it was around 15 homers last year, hit well over 300. I would say he kind of, in a way, quietly had a really good offensive year. I think so many people and so many of us talk so much about Enrique and Jack and Kamar that I think Dom kind of under the radar had a really, really good offensive year. And so I'm kind of curious to see if he kind of meets his offensive production meets up with his defensive potential.
Yeah, I guess I think if I had to press charges against myself, boys, I've been hypercritical of Dom Keegan. Like, we see him the most in the postseason, right? And he kind of vanished in some important moments in the postseason. He was 0 for 16 combined in the super regionals and the finals. Those 5 games, he was 0 for 16. And, it just felt the Vandy offense just didn't feel it just felt tired, like they just felt run down to me. And it was a pretty, that they had a hard road to get where they got to. So, but to your point, Kendall, what you said a second ago, if you unpack Dom Keegan's total numbers, the dude hit 345. He had what's that number? It's like 35 extra base hits, 57 RBIs, 148 total bases. He slugged 638. Now, of course, I'm dinging him for the 74 punch outs, and that's a real thing. That's a ton of swing and miss. But, to Vandy Chris's question, if Dom Keegan can be an average catcher, I mean, he could go from, was he undrafted or like 17th round or something last year? I think it was like 17th round, something late. He could, if he shows he's an average catcher, I think he could be a pretty high pick. I mean, not first 50 picks or anything, but how do you walk away from a catcher who can hit? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, the threshold there, you just gotta be able to handle it. You don't have to be, Pudge back there, but you can be Jorge Posada, and the battle play. Because I'm with you. I mean, it is a guy that he can hit, no question about it, and he really goes the other way. That's the thing that's always stood out to me. He was a 19th round pick last year by the Yankees, by the way. Speaking of Jorge Posada.
Yep, gotta love it. Very good. Hey, I love that we're getting a couple questions here. I think that's, for Brady Slavens, #1 in the nation in total bases. I didn't know that last year. I think we think very highly of Brady Slavens. I'll give 2 comments. One is that I think, hey, it's kind of what happened to Caden Wallace. Like, Arkansas is so good, it's just like that they all blur together a little bit. I think Slavens getting hurt at the end, that hurt him a little bit. And then he's another guy, right, that played first base last year. I don't think he's playing first base this year. He's going to move to the outfield. I think that always confuses somebody's All-American candidacy. Yeah. What's your guys' take on Slavens?
Well, first of all, I think the question is #1. He led the #1 team in the nation in total
Oh,
bases.
gotcha.
Not
Oh,
not the nation.
that was clever, Hunter. Look at you. You tricked me. Well played. That's good marketing right there.
Yeah.
Little magic action there.
But
Seriously,
yeah,
well played.
look, the power's real.
Yes.
But kind of like Keegan, there's swing and miss there. I mean, 64 punchies and 19 walks. You know, he had a good year. I don't think it was quite an All-America year, and you know, he's got that kind of potential though. Definitely, he's probably got to prove a little bit more. I think a little bit more consistent contact, but it's in certainly the realm of possibility that he finishes the year as an All-American.
Yeah. The Kendall, I'm going to ask you this question. This is another revelation, and you are like engrossed in this. Man, just doing these All-American lists also made me feel like if you're an SEC West pitching coach, looking at you, Coach Nathan, man, that is going to be a long year. Like some of those lineups those guys are going to have to call pitches to is just going to be like a whack fest. I mean, these guys are going to be blistering balls all year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at LSU with Trey Morgan, Dylan Cruz, Jacob Berry, all on the first team. I mean, Gavin Dugard, Cade Doty, Tyler McManus, you know, was power. You know, showed a power bat in the fall. He actually looked really good. You know, he's one of those guys that, you know, like Sonny DeShara at Auburn. Whenever those guys leave those mid-major programs, you kind of wonder how they're going to make that transition. But I thought McManus looked really good at the one-day look I saw of him in the fall. Saw the Tigers, and so yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the SEC West. I guess the good news is a lot of these teams that have question marks with the rotations, I think they all have talent. But like for instance, Arkansas without Peyton Pallette, like all of a sudden they need like Jackson Wiggins and Hagen Smith and guys like that to step up. You look at LSU, Devin Fontenot and Javon Coleman in the rotation. Like both those guys have talent, but like can they be weekend starters? And then you look at Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and yeah, they've got talent in the rotation, but again. Like there's uncertainty there with both of those teams in those rotations. So I think when you look at all these SEC West teams and frankly, a lot of the SEC, there are question marks with rotations and not so much with the offenses. Strangely enough, a team like South Carolina with Julian Bosnick and Will Sanders like doesn't have uncertainty in the weekend rotation. So it's just kind of interesting to see the dynamic across that conference.
Love it. Let's stay with a couple more of these questions. So Dan Drazan, and it might be Drazen, but I like Drazan. It's got a little more swagger to it. Kendall, you take this one. Realistic expectations for Coach Slosh and the Aggies this year.
You know what? I like that question because if you guys remember when we deliberated the field of 64, it basically came down to A&M versus Baylor. Like that was the pretty much the final team in the field. And so I just think when you look at Baylor, I like Baylor top to bottom offensively a little bit better. I think when you look at Baylor on the front of the rotation with Jay Jackson, I think I feel a little bit better right now about Baylor in the rotation than I do A&M. But I do think when you look at the Aggies overall, like I think their goal, like baby steps, right? Like their goal is to not hit 230 as a team. Their goal is to get to a regional. So, like, if I'm A&M, like, I'm just hoping I get to a regional, especially with how rugged that SEC is this year. If they can do that, I think that's progress. But I'll say this about A&M, and I'll kind of going back to Coach Nathan a little bit. But I think A&M is going to be a lot better offensively. You look at Dylan Rock, Jack Moss, Cole Kaler, guys like that. Troy Claunch with some leadership. He had over 300 in the Pac-12 last year. I think Mike Early is going to have a really solid offense. And I'll tell you what, if A&M can kind of pull a rabbit out of its hat from a pitching standpoint, they could be a lot better than we expect them to be. And oh, by the way, they have a pretty decent pitching coach.
Yep. I love that. Hey, Fitzy, Vandy Chris got a couple questions here. One's about Logan Tanner, and the other one is about LSU. Pick one of those two. I'll take the other one.
Yeah, Logan Tanner. The question mentions that just a 26% throwout rate is tough to overlook. That shocks me that it's that low because he's got a bazooka. I mean, it's consistent 1/8, sub 1/8,
and accurate too. Like he puts it on the bag. Yeah.
I mean, I think when he showed up there as a pitcher that first fall, and he was throwing like 99 off the bump. I mean, it's a really real arm, and I mean, I guess that must just be on the pitching staff not doing a great job holding runners because I don't think it's him. I mean, he can throw the hell out of it. And yes, you're right. The bat he's got big time power as well. I mean, I think I might have picked him for National Player of the Year on one of these various media engagements. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that or not. I was kind of on the spot, but right now, I think he's my pick. I think he's, but look, I'll say Brooks Lee for me is the best player in the country. But I don't know if his team's going to be in a regional, right? Like they might be, but like it's hard to pick a player from a non-regional team to win Player of the Year. It just doesn't usually happen. And so I look for the general, for the the defending national champs. It's his team now, really. No Allen, no Jordan, those guys. I think he's going to have a big year.
I like that. So I'll take Vandy Chris's question about LSU. I'm just going to give an observation on LSU, guys. I mean, they get so much media attention. I've shared with you guys, I get Google alerts every day on College World Series and college baseball. It's so awesome. And LSU is always peppering that email. And so here's my observation on LSU so far. I thought Jay Johnson was an odd fit for LSU. But if you're Jay Johnson, you have to take that job, right? It's like one of those jobs. But the guy is, if he's a Cajun, then I'm like a 7-foot jump shooter, right? Like he's, a Californian. And so, but here's what I'm observing so far. They haven't played a game. They don't have a record yet, right? So we have to account for that. But, Jay Johnson loves college baseball. Like you could accuse Jay Johnson of whatever. You can criticize any coach, but you cannot be critical of him for a lack of passion for this sport. Like he gets up thinking about it. He goes to bed thinking about it. I don't even know if he sleeps because he's still thinking about college baseball. And I sense that the LSU fan base, including their baseball alumni, have picked up on that and they really dig it. And so again, if he loses his first SEC series, that may not matter, right? Like it's a quick trigger in Baton Rouge. But I do think
no honeymoon in Baton Rouge.
That's right. But I'm saying I still think that aspect of Jay Johnson, I didn't see it as far as being a connector for him with the LSU fan base. But hey, and by the way, guys, I'm going to say something that could really bite me in the butt here. That LSU fan base needed a jump charge, right? Like when I think about the fan bases in college baseball right now, the ones that are getting the most hype are not LSU. It's Mississippi State. It's Arkansas. It's those places. So the LSU fan base, like we needed a little bit of a jump start, in my opinion.
Yeah, the one thing that's really interesting about the Jay Johnson hire at LSU is I'm always very curious to look at how coaches take over and like what their attitude is. I won't name names, but there are coaches that have taken over big time programs for legendary coaches where like the first time you talk to them, you're like, oh man, like these guys are way overwhelmed for this job. Like they're working uphill here. Like they're in trouble. But I think when you look at Jay from like the first day he took that job, like he knew the expectation. He might not have been the most natural fit, but he knew the expectation. And when you talk to the guy, like he gets it. Like he gets that those guys expect to win at an elite level in college baseball. And like and people may like be doubting what I'm saying here, but like there are coaches that get those jobs and like, 2 months onto the job, you're like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out. Like they don't, they're being a little sensitive. They like they think the fans are crazy. Jay doesn't think LSU fans are crazy. Like he loves those guys having those kind of expectations.
They're both crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So for that reason, I think it's actually, strangely enough, like a really good fit at this point. Now we'll see if it still is after year one, but no, it is an interesting fit. Now I'll be very curious too. We talk so much about Jay. I'd be very curious to see how Jason Kelly fits in with their pitching staff, because I think when you look at LSU, they're working from behind a little bit pitching wise against some of these other teams in that league. So seeing what JK can do in his first year is going to be interesting too.
I think they're going to be a lot like Arizona was last year. They're going to just bludgeon the heck out of everybody with those big bats. It's going to be one of the, it might be the best offense in the country. It's certainly one of the top 3 for me, maybe Ole Miss and Georgia Tech and LSU. I don't know, Arkansas. There's a few in that mix, but they're going to score a ton of runs. And all they got to do, like you said, Kendall, is like with Arizona last year, if they could have a 4.5 ERA, right? They'll be in great shape. They're an Omaha team, and I think LSU is kind of in that same boat. And I think Jason Kelly can do it. I mean, JK is the real deal. And look, those people. They like offense. You might have heard of this gorilla ball. This gorilla ball thing. It's in their DNA, baby. His teams always hit. They always hit. Yeah. Arizona hit. Nevada hit. San Diego hit when he was there. I mean, they always hit. They're gonna hit a freaking ton at LSU this year and beyond. Every year. That's just he's a great hitting coach, and I think he's gonna win over those fans fast.
So I will interject something negative here. And in the spirit of fairness, I will say this about Jay Style is in that conference, historically his teams have not played great defense. In that conference, you have to play decent defense. If you don't, you're going to get beat. So I would say if there's one thing that kind of his evolution, like the changes he'll have to make as a coach, is placing kind of more of an emphasis on the defensive aspect, because you have to play defense in that league.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hey, and I'll one more point, and then we'll segue on from here. But I think about Jason Kelly, like in Arizona State last year. They lose their entire rotation to injury like immediately. And they had a fairly competent position player group. And for JK, like there was never going to be like, hey, you're my Friday guy, my Saturday guy. Like the roles were never going to be pretty, because it was just a complete duct tape job the whole year. And JK, the team ERA was 5, but he held it together just enough to get them into a regional. And I think that really applies this year to LSU. Like Jason Kelly, the pitching coach at LSU, does not need to construct a pitching staff that holds teams to 3 runs or less. He needs to construct a pitching staff that's willing to win games 8-7, because LSU is going to score 8 a lot, like a lot. They're going to score. That offense is scary as heck. So anyway, yeah, the whole SEC is so intriguing right now. It's going to be such a blast. Boys, let's move on to some of the conferences. The conference previews are on the website. I mean, just every day, peppering the website with new conference previews. So I've done the Pac-12 so far. Fitzy, you did the SEC. Kendall, you did the Big 12. Here, I'm going to give you guys 2 kind of brackets that to start us with. So I want you to pick your favorite part of your opening paragraph for the conference preview. So that's kind of where you kind of give a broad stroke overview. So give me a point from there that you really loved. And then the other thing is just, when you think about one aspect of the conference that, it's a similar topic to the All-American team, but as you dug deep into the conference, something that just smashed you across the face. And I'll start you guys. Okay. My favorite thing about the Pac-12, they got 2 teams in Omaha last year for the first time since 2013. And that's big, right? Like that's huge that they're starting to be in that rarefied air again. And I'll give you a part B. I love that they're having a conference tournament in Scottsdale, Arizona this year. Like that's a momentum builder for me. Now, the thing that smashed me across the face, the best class, again, I'm not, maybe this is controversial. The best class, the most talented class in the Pac-12 this year is the freshman class. It is a joke how much freshman talent jumped in there. Travis Bazzana from Oregon State, Australian kid's going to hit the top of the order. Braden Montgomery is going to be the closer for Stanford. He's throwing 98. He's a switch hitting center fielder as well. And then UCLA's freshman class is comedy. I mean, it's like, I think in my top 10 spots of impact freshmen for the Pac-12, UCLA's got 7 spots. It was like somebody texted me and said, hey, why is UCLA's team preview in the impact freshman section? That's what it looks like. It just looks like UCLA's roster. But anyway, Fitzy, you want to go next?
Yeah. So first of all, great points on the Pac. I think the Pac is trending in a good direction. I really, I like the look of that league this year. The SEC also going to be strong. Kendall and I punted our opening paragraphs. I blame Kendall for this decision. He thought that it was not worthwhile, and so I said okay. We went with that. But we just let you go ahead and do yours because you're so good at it.
I like it. That's one
such a wordsmith.
Yeah, I like the opening paragraph. I'm not going to punt it unless you force me to. I enjoy the opening paragraph.
See, different stripes here.
So you're gonna verbalize your opening paragraph right now, Fitzy.
Yeah, SEC is. I mean, it's same old. It's the best league. 6 teams in our top 9 in our preseason rankings. I do think it feels like the gap between the top 25 teams and the rest of the league is pretty significant. I feel like this league is fairly top heavy, maybe more than usual. And I say that, watch, a Kentucky or South Carolina sneak up on everybody, or A&M, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, those teams aren't pushovers, but it does feel like the gap between Tennessee, or whoever is the last team in the rankings, I think it's Tennessee, and the next tier feels more significant than the gap between the first 8. But again, South Carolina maybe is the exception to that, because if Sanders and Bosnick pan out, I mean, they might have the best rotation in the league. So they're an interesting team, South Carolina. I'm just kind of rambling about the league right now, but that's one, that one in Kentucky too. I feel like could be sleepers. I don't know what to make of Auburn. I don't think Bush Thompson knows what to make of Auburn. I talked to him at the end of the fall. He's like, man, we could be a lot of things. We could be a lot of things. This could be good. This could be bad. He doesn't know. And we'll figure that out. But then there's Alabama. I mean, I'm wondering if I'm a little low on those guys. I know they've got some experience back, but I've got some question marks as well. And so I don't know. I mean, all those teams, Missouri is the one team that feels like they've been really passed. They need to get it going somehow. I think it's going to be a tough year for those guys. But anyway, SEC. This is not a very good summation. It's just a ramble job, but it's fascinating. Yeah, it's
Kentucky. Even Kentucky. I did Kentucky's fall report. Even Kentucky with Cole Stupp and Ryan Ritter and guys like that. Kentucky actually could be really good if all the pieces kind of fall into place for them.
Yeah, that's what's so unique about the SEC this year is it's not the famous teams. I mean, they're all famous, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not the, like blue blood teams for that league that have the best on paper Friday Night Arms. It's just that's what's weird is the pitching is just very, very unsettled in the league. Well, but you said it, Kendall, they're very talented, but they're just not as established.
Yeah, and then speaking of the East, I'll kind of piggyback and pick one of these questions here. But Tennessee, all of a sudden, with the uncertainty around Blade Tidwell and Seth Halverson being hurt, those are big losses for them. I mean, Tidwell was a guy that, speaking of the All-America team, we really debated on whether or not to put him in or not. It sounds like he may be out for a while. We kind of opted not to put him in because of the uncertainty there. But all of a sudden, Tennessee, to me, even though we think they're going to be really offensive, but the complexion of that rotation changes dramatically without him. Because I think, for me, he's the best returning starting pitcher in that league, with Peyton Pallette out at Arkansas. And so not having him is big. And, of course, if you don't have him, you really want to have a power arm like Halverson, and he's unavailable for a couple of months. So I'm fascinated to see what Tennessee and Frank Anderson do with that weekend rotation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Without Tidwell, there's just so much riding on those young arms that haven't proven as much. I mean, Chase Burns throws 100. Let's see if jump right into the SEC fire and throw strikes. Chase Dollander making the jump from the Sun Belt right to the SEC. I mean, that's a significant jump. So they need those guys to be really good. I mean, that's just that definitely create some uncertainty around them.
Evan Russell's tricky for me too, because I know, I can't find someone to confirm my skepticism that Evan Russell can do this. I'm looking at it, this is a kid that hasn't caught in 5 years, and now he's going to be a starting catcher in the SEC for a pitching staff that everybody throws 100. That just, those wires are not connecting for me. But every baseball person I talk to that I trust, including our own David Seifert, who said, I saw him catching the fall, looked fine. He caught a bunch of this. He caught Tidwell, I believe, and it looked fine. And so I just logically I can't get there, but I'm going to defer to those guys' opinions. Hey, Kendall, before we do the Big 12, let's fire away at some of these questions. Justin is coming at me with data, which is always hurtful. I'm just trying to make anecdotal arguments, and he's coming at me with that LSU has led the country in attendance for the past 15 years or so, and that is a very fair rebuttal to mine. But I will say, again, I'm going to go right back to anecdotal at you, Justin. I feel like the Mississippi State and Arkansas fan bases are more inflamed right now than the LSU fan base. I think if you took a coach and said, hey, you're going to go play a super regional on the road, would you rather play at Hail State, at Arkansas, or at LSU? In my heart of hearts, I think coaches would pick LSU. I think Starkville and Fayetteville are scarier places right now.
Unless you're NC State.
Unless you're NC State. NC State could have played on the moon.
NC State wanted that smoke, baby.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. So amazing. Hey, Fitzy, did you comment on Connor Prelip? What I guess we don't really know, right? What he's going to do.
We're not expecting him to pitch this spring. I think the surgery was May, and so they're not going to rush him back. Right before it's just there's no chance. So I really don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like he's almost going to be like a Kumar Rocker, except for he had the surgery where it doesn't behoove him to jump into games in the SEC. He wouldn't be ready until the conference season. So, Kendall, segue us to the Big 12. Let's talk Texas.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting league. I mean, this is a league that we have 6 teams in the postseason field. That's a majority of the clubs. The only teams that didn't make it: Kansas State, West Virginia, and Kansas. And I actually think all three of those teams have a lot of potential. I think when you look at Kansas State with guys like Nick Goodwin, Connor McCullough, the right-handed pitcher for K-State's back. He's going to have to step up. West Virginia obviously didn't have the season they had hoped for last year. They had some injuries, Ryan Bergert and a few other guys. But, you look at Jacob Waters on the back end. They get Victor Scott back from an injury. Or I think it was Tevin Tucker's back from an injury this year. Victor Scott's back. So West Virginia actually has some pretty interesting pieces. If some of those younger arms kind of step up. But then you look at Kansas with Tavian Josenberger and guys like that, Jonah Ulane on the back end, they've got potential too. So I think the thing with the Big 12 for me is the top 6 teams I think are a little bit ahead of those other ones. But I could easily see one of those 3 teams at the bottom. I don't have a lot of conviction in that right now, but I could easily see one of those 3 teams jumping up in there and kind of replacing Baylor or Oklahoma. But I think for me, we've talked so much about Texas and TCU and Texas Tech. I'm going to focus on Oklahoma because I think Oklahoma is a fascinating team for me. They absolutely burned me last year. I thought they were going to be really good. They stunk up the joint. It started with Dalton Fowler at the Round Rock Classic and was just all downhill from there. But I think when you look at this team overall, Tanner Treadaway's back from an injury. Jimmy Crooks behind the plate's a really, really talented backstop and hitter. And then it all kind of hinges on the pitching staff. Jake Bennett is a guy that has premium stuff, but he's got to go out there and be more consistent and show it. I think when you look at the rest of the Rican rotation, with Chaz Martinez, a two-way player, they think he's going to hit for a lot of power. They think he's going to be a consistent weekend starter. And then you talk about guys like David Stanley, Griffin Miller, 2 newcomers. They've got a lot of options and a lot of premium options on the mound. I'm just very curious. I'm a little gun shy about those guys, but they have a chance to be really good. They're probably my Omaha sleeper right now.
Fitzy, when reading Kendall's Big 12 preview confirmed, I was kind of excited about Oklahoma State, but I didn't know why. And then you saw them, and that confirmed it. And then reading what Kendall wrote, I mean, this is Oklahoma State's a cool story to me in that they've been so consistent under Josh Holiday, but they really just had that one run to Omaha. And you could argue in 2019 it's just a tough draw. I mean, they played one of the most fiercely competed super regionals in history. If I'm not mistaken, that super regional in Lubbock was 3 one-run games, or 2. Anyway, so give us. I think it's worth repeating. Give us your recap on why you like Oklahoma State so much.
Yeah, this team is. I just think they're loaded. And a couple of questions about opening weekend. I will be in Nashville for Oklahoma State versus Vanderbilt opening weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. And it's funny. I remember talking with Tim Corbin this fall about his team and about how they're playing Oklahoma State that first weekend. He goes, "Yeah, I mean, we don't have Josh's club. Josh, he's got the really good club. I don't have, we got a lot more question marks. We got a good heartbeat for the game though."
Yes,
listen,
look at that. That's a great accent right there, New Hampshire.
Listen, Oklahoma State is got a ton of power, power bats, power arms, and when you look around college baseball, there aren't that many teams that have, it feels like, established starting pitching, as we talked about. Even in the SEC, all those teams in the top 5 have guys that need to establish themselves. Oklahoma State's got a first-team All-American ace in Justin Campbell. You got third-year guys coming into their own in Bryce Osmond and Cale Davis. You got Victor Medeiros, who's a premium talent, sophomore. He's a legit 4-pitch, workhorse starter. I think it's going to click for him. Tons of power arms in the bullpen. I mean, it's just they're really loaded, and they need certain things to happen. I mean, we're buying obviously Nolan McLean. I'm buying Griffin Dorshing making that jump from Northern Kentucky to Stillwater and having a big year. I really think he will. I mean, you pointed out, Runes, recently, if you look at his strikeout walk numbers, I know it's lesser competition, but it's a guy that is not just some, hacker, right? Like, he actually controls his zone. He walked a lot more than he struck out last year. That tells me that he can make this transition probably pretty well. He's not just going to be flailing away. He's got big power, but he's got a clue at the plate. So there's some pieces like that. I mean, Lyle Miller Green could be a difference maker. So just a lot of power everywhere you look. But there's also some athletes, and Caden Trinkle still there in center field. Marcus Brown as a breakout pick of mine at shortstop. I think they're going to be exciting. And I think I already said you can put it on the board. They're going to Omaha. I will reiterate that. I'm doubling down. Oklahoma State is going to Omaha this year.
Double or nothing?
I mean,
Double
we have them ranked number 7 in the country. So obviously we think they're one of the 8 best teams, but I just really believe in this club.
You know what I really believe in? The swag meter with these guys, because if you look at like their social media photos, like they just look good in cowboy hats. Like they look strong, like physical. They're wearing the cowboy hat. I got a good feeling about the Pokes, man. I'm with Aaron here.
You know what I also like is that their recruiting plan has been national again. And, think about that. Rob Walton's a great all-time pitcher at Oklahoma State. He's from New Jersey. Incaviglia and Robin Ventura are California guys. And, Justin Campbell's a California kid. Medeiros comes from Miami. You go up and down. It really is a national brand when you start thinking about college baseball, and they've been able to utilize that national brand. Nolan McLean is from North Carolina, for God's sakes. I mean, it's really awesome. By the way, Fitzy, I love the you dropped a little Hitch line, the movie Hitch in there. Remember power bats, power arms, power tie? Anybody Hitch? Never seen it?
I've seen it, but I did not really
not
really create a lasting impression.
Nothing really resonated with me like that.
Power steering, power tie. Oh, it's a great scene. Hitch is an underrated movie. Will Smith.
Yeah.
Kevin, what's his name?
Kevin James, the King of
Kevin
Queens.
James is excellent in that movie. Oh gosh. But anyway, I appreciated the reference very much. So you had a fan over here. Boys, before we got Justin gives me the life advice that I shouldn't podcast under the influence. I did notice that Fitzy, I threw it out there, and Hunter, I appreciate you got my back. I threw it out there. I made a bold statement, and Fitzy and Kendall just went crickets on me, which was the smart play.
Well, you wouldn't stop talking. I couldn't agree with you or disagree. You wouldn't shut up.
That's right. You just let me get out there and jump off. That's good. That was.
I thought your point was valid. I agree with you. Right now, I think the way you put it, inflamed. I think the Mississippi State and Arkansas fan bases are more inflamed. And my Twitter feed, anytime anything gets tweeted about the SEC West, inevitably devolves into State fans and Arkansas fans bitching at each other. I don't get that from LSU. LSU fans have been quiet, and they used to pick on me a lot, and I can handle it. I'm a big boy, but I've been quiet. They didn't even picked on me in a while. So I mean, I don't know. It's anecdotal, but it tells me something.
Well, I'll actually say this. Obviously, you look at the atmosphere for like the Stanford Super, the dude, like it was insane, especially in that one game. But I'll tell you what, when you go to a super regional with the box, like it is different. Like it is not a party. Like it's like you're showing up to the MGM for a boxing match. Like there's just like a buzz in the air. It's intense. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a party at all. It's like more intense than it is anything else. And that place gets rowdy. It's insanely loud. I remember a video I posted on social media from the Florida State Super a couple of years ago. I mean, you couldn't even hear the next person, the person next to you talking, like it was that loud. So I actually still like the box a little bit better for an actual big super regional.
There's nothing like the roar at the box. College baseball has nothing that matches that roar. I remember sitting, this is an odd example, I guess, but I guess the last time I was there in the postseason, I think was 2016 for the super regional against Coastal. I remember sitting on the field taking photos, and you start calling Baton Rouge and everything, and it's just like it gives you goosebumps. But they lost that series, right? I mean, anyone can go in anywhere and win a series if you're a team of destiny. But just having that advantage doesn't guarantee you anything. But boy, it is a nice advantage. There's no question. I mean, that place is still very legit.
Yeah, you think back to 2005 when Ole Miss with the rowdy crowd lost to Texas in Oxford?
Yep. I would say this year will be a great test case because there's very real possibilities that all 3 of those programs are hosting a super regional this year. I will say, Justin, that attendance is arguably the most manipulated statistic in college sports. So I'm not buying that argument. I'm buying Kendall's argument. Kendall's argument that when you start thinking about the box for super, I agree. I get to play and coach at the old box, and I will contradict my own point. Very frightening, like very intimidating place to play and coach. And so, and I think it's going to be all good because I think this fan base really is fired up, and they don't like hearing blowhards like me make comments like that, so they'll probably do something about it.
But I wonder sometimes if that can backfire. The pressure cooker there, and you kind of mentioned it, like it's so business-like, right? I think Kendall, you said that it's not even necessarily a party. It's like, all right, we're here to freaking win, and
we're going to take care of business.
I remember in 2016, you could kind of feel when it was going sideways, and you could feel the fans kind of, their apprehension, and it almost seeps onto the field. I don't know if that's valid or not, but there are certain places like that in sports where it's like, they care so much that it maybe can work against you when you're at home for one of those.
Yeah,
plays.
I mean, it was actually kind of surreal being at that Florida State Super, which is Mike Martin's last year. He gets to Omaha, but that Florida State Super late in the game, you could almost just kind of feel the LSU fans like seeing what's about to happen unfold. Like you could just tell from the crowd reaction, they knew it was about to happen. It's kind of interesting just to be there and experience and kind of feel that.
Nothing ruins a party like a team of destiny. Looking at you, Mike Martin's last season, looking at you, NC State, like nothing ruins the party like that team that's absolutely unconscious showing up. So
I still remember last year when NC State hit that home run. I was sitting in the press box in Austin, and like the whole place was like speechless just watching that home run. It almost looked like the picture of Baum Stadium. But I don't want Hunter to hunt me down, so I'm just going to stop there.
That's right. That's right. Hey, boys, let's wrap with this. This has been a good wrap session here. Let's wrap with this. So the D1 Player Society on the baseball and softball sides are starting to get cooking here. And I saw the video montage of everybody kind of introduce themselves. And man, like the players are so, like you can see their personality and they're so unique. Like you've got guys from all four corners of the United States, all different positions. You've got pitchers, you've got position players. Same thing for the softball side. I am so pumped to see what these guys put out. I'm pumped to like kind of get on the microphone with those guys. And so anyway, yeah, Fitzy, give me a takeaway on the Player Society.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It really, we've got a very energetic team of content producers that, listen, competition was fierce for these spots. I mean, it kind of blew me away how much interest there was. I mean, people are really excited about it. The players are really excited about kind of having their own voice magnified, and we got some great personalities. That's it's just it's people who are active on social media. They know what they're doing. There's different skill sets. I know there's talk about podcasts being produced by certain of the players, and there's different, obviously you're going to have a lot of Instagram stuff and whatever else, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see how it goes.
Kendall, go ahead. You were close to this as it kind of formulated.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the biggest goal we had, guys, is, when we started this is to, I think people kind of see things through the lens of kind of the power conferences a lot. And the thing that we wanted to do is put together a list of players from all over the country. We've got a guy from Cal Baptist who apparently, Garrett Ostrander, who is like a TikTok star or something, a personality like that. You got Tanner Smith at Oregon, Trey Faltine at Texas, and of course, the one and only Bob Moore at Arkansas. And so it's just getting guys from all over the country. And, Aaron mentioned the podcast. I'm really looking forward to seeing what crazy Wes Burton has in store for us. He certainly has a heck of a personality. I just want Wes's first guest to be a Mississippi State guy. That's all I ask for.
That would be outstanding, wouldn't it? Oh, very good. Gentlemen, this was fun. I'm glad we did this. I've said this before. Sometimes the podcast needs you. Sometimes you need the podcast. I needed the podcast tonight. This was fun. We're gonna wrap here because I'm literally hanging up and I'm getting right back in the Atlantic 10. I mean, we're just cranking out those teams. We're diving in neck deep in the A10. By the way, 2 super regional teams since I think 2015. The A10. Davidson in 2017, VCU in 2015.
Sean Stifler's done a very underrated job there at VCU. Like, he's done a terrific job with the Rams.
No kidding. I mean, first team All-American, and Dick Cook, the retired coach at Davidson. That's one of the greatest stories in college baseball in 25 years. So we appreciate the interaction in the live stream. By the way, really appreciate your questions, gentlemen. That was super fun, and we'll keep cranking. Just everybody get on that website every day. There's new conferences every single day. It's been awesome. I want to thank our friends at Netting Pros for their sponsorship of the preseason. And that is it. We are out of here, and we will catch you next time.